guys, how's it going? MasterBucks here, and welcome to my 2019-2020 Premier League predictions. Yes, the new Premier League season is already here. I can't believe how quickly it has crept up on us, but I'm not complaining. So with the first game of the Premier League season pretty much only a week away, it is time for me to drop my Premier League predictions. And just a fair warning as well, it's going to be very, very hard for me to try to top my predictions last season because I bloody banged it. I correctly predicted the winners of the Premier League. I got 14 out of 20 teams within at least 2 positions of where they finished in the table. 7 of those teams were the exact positions that they finished, which is an unreal effort. They do not call me the prediction god for no bloody reason, but I am going to try. It is a very, very tough table to call, especially the bottom 10. But just before we get into it, I'll let you know that this prediction video is brought to you by OneFootball. With the new Premier League season about to get underway and pretty much just every other league of football about to get underway, OneFootball will help you keep up to date. It is one of the biggest football apps on the planet, available on both iOS and Android. It gives you all the latest scores, the latest news, fixtures, transfers, the lot. It will give you specific information on any clubs or teams you want to follow. And the best part about it all is that it is completely free. It is freer than Aaron Ramsey to Juventus. It is that damn free. Sorry, Arsenal fans, for the reminder. Be sure to download it today. Use the link in the description down below. And thank you once again to OneFootball for sponsoring this video. But the time has now come to drop my Premier League predictions, going from bottom to top. And in the past, I have had a bit of a tendency to talk a little bit too much about certain teams, and it's dragged on for a bit. I'm going to keep things sharp, condensed, and hopefully it won't drag on for 30 minutes or so. I could speak about a lot of these teams for so long, but we'll keep it nice and simple. Starting off in 20th position, it is Sheffield United. Now, Sheffield United to me are probably, and I think most people would agree, the least impressive team of the 3 promoted sides from the Championship that are coming up this season. I do not think that the squad that they have when they were coming up was Premier League standard, and their inactivity in the transfer window hasn't exactly given me any sort of, thoughts that maybe they would be somewhat capable of competing to avoid relegation this season. Their biggest names are, I think they recently picked up Ollie McBurney and Phil Jagielka. So when your biggest name is Phil Jagielka, that's not exactly filling me with a super amount of confidence. I am like 50% sure that they will finish on the bottom of the Premier League table, but I'm like 99% sure that they are going back down to the Championship in their first season in the Premier League, or at least this season in the Premier League. I know that they were here before. Let's not start. But yeah, sorry Sheffield United, but you should have picked up Frank Ribery when you had the chance. In 19th position is Brighton and Hove Albion. Now, Brighton and Hove Albion have kind of been on the decline for a little while now, or at least for the last season or 2. And I feel like this maybe is going to be the season where it finally ends in a relegation for them. Last season, they were relying on a 34, 35-year-old Glenn Murray for goals. And I don't know, they have brought in some okay players. Like they brought in I don't know if he's a Belgian, but a nice little left winger from Genk called Trossard or something. And he looks like he's probably got a bit of ability for him. But they have just, I don't think, got really another season of Premier League football in them. I also have some pretty serious questions of Graham Potter as well, because he spent close to a decade in the Swiss league with Ostersund, and then he's finally come back to England. He took charge of Swansea City, who had only just gone down into the Championship. They finished 10th. So you'd ask questions of his ability even to do it in the Championship. Now he's taking over a Premier League club that are in a bit of trouble. And I'm not so sure in his first ever Premier League season if he's going to be able to do anything with them to keep them up. I don't know. I just have my doubts about him. I'm not saying he's going to get the sack or something at any point this season. It might happen if Brighton are struggling to stay up in the Premier League. I think if they'd kept a hold of Chris Hughton, I think he would have maybe kept them up. But I don't know. I do not know, and I'm pretty confident Brighton will go down this season. In 18th position, we have Burnley. Now, Burnley had a bit of a pretty bad finish to their last Premier League season, and my concern with them is that their form might sort of somewhat carry over. They've lost a couple of pretty decent players like Heaton and Wokes, and haven't brought really anyone else in aside from Eric Peters from Stoke. So I have some concerns. I don't really know where the goals are going to come from for him. They have brought in, Jay Rodriguez. I don't know if he's going to be able to get you 10 goals in the Premier League per season. So my concern with Burnley, I have concerns for them. I think they will be the other team that go down, finishing in 18th. In 17th, it is Norwich. Now, Norwich actually did play a pretty nice brand of football in the Championship. However, I have my doubts over whether or not they'll be able to play that same sort of brand of football in the Premier League. I get the feeling that they'll be just shut down by most Premier League sides, and even then, probably won't have as much as the ball compared to when they were playing in the Championship. There are also questions about Pukki, if he can keep his incredible goal-scoring form from the Championship and take it over to with him to the Premier League, because we know so many players that are brilliant in the Championship, score a ridiculous amount of goals, but can't quite translate that into Premier League goals. They also have a very tough Premier League start as well. Like, they play I think three of their first 5 games they play against top 6 sides in the Premier League. So it's a tough start for them. But yeah, I still think they're in for a bit of a tough one. But they have signed some other okay players like Patrick Roberts, Dermich is the striker, and then Ralph Farman, who's got plenty of experience and has been playing at a pretty high level in the Bundesliga for quite some time. So I feel like they will just about stay up. In 16th place, we have Southampton. Southampton are a bit of an interesting story, you know, from when they first got to the Premier League and they were finishing way high up the table, higher than anyone thought that they really could. And then in the last 2 seasons or so, they've ended up in back-to-back relegation battles, and it's a bit of a strange story. But no, I think they should still survive again this season. Ralph Hasenhüttl gets a pre-season now to really work with that team, and they have some nice young players in there that can definitely improve, and I expect some pretty decent performances from some of their younger lads, and I'm not really expecting too much from them. They have brought in Danny Ings. It'll be interesting to see how he does. Lost a couple of other players too still, but I don't think Southampton are going to go down this season. I'm expecting a modest 16th place finish. And in 15th place is Newcastle. Now, if you'll allow me, I'm going to speak just a little bit longer about Newcastle. This off-season has been nuts. We've gone from absolute highs of, hey, we may be getting taken over, we could become the next Man City, to absolute bloody disaster in losing Rafa Benitez, not being able to keep a hold of Solomon Rondon, losing Jose Perez, and it just felt like everyone in the club was up for fucking sale. Everyone was on the chopping block. It felt like an absolute disaster. It felt like the end of the club, and now we've reinvested the money that we got from Perez and Joselu and a few others, picked up Joelinton, who looks like a nice little decent striker from the Bundesliga, a bit young too, so could hopefully kick on and get even better. We've only recently just picked up Alan St. Maximum, the guy who has the most dribbles completed out of any single player in Europe's top 5 leagues, including Lionel Messi. The guy's got an incredible amount of upside. He's direct as you know what, I'm just saying. And no, we've also picked up, finally, after what feels like a bloody decade, Jetro Willems as well. I swear I bought that guy in like FIFA 14, FIFA 15 career modes because we were linked with him for so damn long, and now he's finally here. It's crazy. And honestly, I took a look and put together a starting 11 of my own with Newcastle players, and the team is actually sick. My only concern is Steve Bruce going to be able to get the best out of them? And the other question that I have is, now that we're sort of actually finally splashing the cash a little bit, what was it that made Rafa Benitez go? There was certain assurances that the board couldn't exactly give to Rafa, but yet here we are now spending something like 60-something million in the window to bring in 3 pretty decent players. It's an interesting one. And, you know, we've done this when we had a world-class manager like Rafa. Now we've replaced him with Steve Bruce, and now we're splashing the cash. It just does my head in. That's like having this beautiful Mercedes F1 car, and instead of giving it to Lewis Hamilton, you give it to like fucking Lance Stroll or something. I don't know. I was 100% subscribed to thinking that we were going to be relegated this season and that it was going to be a disaster. Now we've splashed the cash, brought in some nice players. Our starting 11's actually somewhat decent looking. I think we may just stay up, hopefully. In 14th place, Bournemouth. Now, Bournemouth have become almost a staple of the Premier League, which is crazy because for their first few seasons, I always had them nailed down as relegation battlers every single season. But now they're just so regularly finishing, not in the top 10, but just in the 11th, 14th, like that sort of zone. It's incredible. And I had put them in 14th because I think they'll do the same. This is exactly where they finished last season, 14th position. I think they'll probably end up about the same place because even though they've got a bit of they had a dodgy defense last season. Like, they had the worst defense in the Premier League outside of the relegated teams. And, like, they've lost 1 or 2 other of their defenders, like Tyrone Mings, for example, going to Aston Villa. They did bring in Lloyd Kelly from Bristol, I think it is. Yeah, Bristol City. They've also got, is it Philip Billing as well, who I know can go back. So I think they'll focus on trying to shore up their defense a little bit. But Bournemouth just feel like they, you know, with Brooks, with Wilson, and they'll always find a way to score goals. And if they can shore up their defense, then I reckon a 14th position isn't too unlikely. 13th on the table, I've given to Crystal Palace. Yes, Crystal Palace in 13th. I think them keeping Zaha, so long as they can do it, there's still a few days left to go in the window. So if he does go, just, for future reference, I would 100% change this prediction. But if he stays, which I think he may, Wan-Bissaka is a bit of a loss as well. But them keeping a hold of Zaha was so damn important to me, putting them in 13th. And of course, I don't really think with the loss of Wan-Bissaka, it's going to be super devastating for them in the same way if they were to lose Zaha. Hopefully Benteke, I don't know why, but I feel like he's going to get his shit together this season as well. I don't know if he'll go and get 10 goals or double-digit goals in the Prem this season, but I feel like he can't be any worse than he was last season, surely. Now for 12th, and an interesting one, it's Aston Villa. Aston Villa in 12th. Are they the next Fulham? That is the meme. So many signings. They've got 10 plus. I think it's like 12 or so signings this season, which are just crazily. They've brought in Wesley. They've brought in the marvelous fucking Nakamba. They've got Heaton, Douglas Luiz, Mings, Target, and it's just a ridiculous amount of players. But also none that really stand out or jump off the page. I mean, Wesley maybe, Nakamba of course. But no, that's really about it though. See, here's the thing. Even though all the signings that they've made aren't exactly real great game-changing players, I still think they'll do alright this season, but not less to do with the players or the management or anything like that. I think it's because Aston Villa are going to have a bit of a buzz about them. They're not a big club, but they're a somewhat big club that have been brewing in the Championship for so long, and now finally they're back in the Premier League, and I think they'll have that buzz and that hype, sort of in the same way that Leicester had when they won the Premier League. Not to that extent, and of course I'm not saying they'll win the Premier League, but I can see them actually getting a relatively decent way up the table here, and I'm going to say that Aston Villa are going to finish in 12th. I mean, it'll be interesting to see how they deal without Tammy Abraham, who scored the bulk of their goals. Hopefully Wesley can still get those goals or somewhat make up for it. And they also have a bit of a kind start to the Premier League too, so they'll get a bit of momentum early on, I would imagine. And if they don't, maybe Aston Villa are actually going to end up a lot lower in the table. In 11th place, pretty high up the table, is Watford. And yes, even I agree, this doesn't look quite right, even to me. 11th seems very, very high. See, I know in the back of my mind and in my heart and everything that there is not a chance, surely, Watford make top 10 this season. And yet here I am saying that they're finishing 11th. The thing is that I just don't exactly feel comfortable putting Watford any lower or putting them below any of the other teams that I've said so far, just based off of everything. So I'm going to say that Watford will top the bottom 10. Now onto the top 10, and in this 10th position is Leicester City. I think Leicester City are on for another top 10 finish. That's pretty obvious right now. To be fair, the top 10 can very easily be split into the top 6 and then the rest, like bottom 4 of the top 10, because they're the ones that are trickier to call. There's not a chance we're seeing Everton or Wolves, West Ham or Leicester end up in the top 6 this season, I don't think, unless Chelsea have an absolute mare, and can't see any of the other top 5 clubs somehow ending or the other 5 clubs in the top 6 somehow falling out the top 6. It's really just Chelsea, isn't it? But I think Leicester will be on the bottom of that bottom 4 in the top 10. It's getting very confusing, I know. But I think Leicester will finish in 10th. They were able to keep a hold of Tielemans. They brought in Jose Perez, who I've watched Jose Perez for years and years now as a Newcastle fan. And let me tell you, the fact we got 30 million for him is absolutely crazy. He's a very streaky player. He can go missing quite a lot. But when he's on, he is an absolute gem. So he's worth 30 million when he's on his game. When he's not, it can be a bit interesting. But the fact that we got 30 million for him, crazy. We'll see how he ends up getting put into that team, especially with players like, Madison that they've got, and a number of others that are sort of playing in the role that he would play. It's interesting. And they've also lost Maguire for just a ridiculous amount of... They have absolutely cashed in big time for him. And I say fair play, because I don't think he's an 80 million pound player, Harry Maguire, but he is still, regardless, going to be quite a loss for them as well. And maybe if they'd kept Maguire, I might have put them a position or two higher. But no, 10th for Leicester City, I feel like is fair. Now for 9th place, I have given it to West Ham United. Yes, West Ham in 9th position. They lost their top goal scorer in Arnautovic after he was basically uncomfortable and didn't want to be at the club anymore, wanted to move on, end up just securing the bag and going over to China. But they have not replaced him per se, they've brought in Haller, who's a nice striker that can definitely, I think, in my opinion, score goals in the Premier League, double digits or so. So he should be able to in a sense, replace the goals that Arnautovic was providing, at least in the Premier League. That's what I'm saying. Felipe Anderson, I think, will actually contribute quite a fair bit as well, alongside Haller. And I think Anderson is actually maybe on for a pretty almost better season than he had last time out. And Fornals as well that they've signed, Pablo Fornals. I reckon he's going to be a very tidy player too. So another one to keep your eye open for. West Ham should have an okay season, and I'm going to say they're going to finish in 9th. In 8th position is Wolverhampton Wanderers. Yes, Wolves in 8th position, and I honestly think Wolves are probably a better team than Everton, but I'm not going to put them in 7th position. I'm going to put them in 8th because, of course, the Europa League. I reckon that is going to weigh on them a bit. Their depth, the depth of their team, it's okay, but it's hardly great. It's nothing like the depth of an average top 6 team, but I think they are, as a result of being in the Europa League, maybe going to, from time to time, drop points in the Premier League, and it's going to affect their final position. So that's why I have them in 8th. They were able to do some of the main things that they were supposed to do in the transfer window. They kept a hold of Jimenez. They've got Dendoncker in as well. And again, like I said, they also brought in Patrick Catrone and loaned in, I think, the Real Madrid defender, Jesus Vallejo, or Jesus Vallejo, however you would pronounce it. But some okay, nice additions for them to hopefully maybe even things out and make sure everyone gets a relatively decent run in both the Prem and the Europa League. But because of the extra competition they're playing in, I am putting them in 8th position. And in 7th position, outside the top 6, just, you know who it is, Everton. Everton in 7th, I feel like every damn Premier League prediction I do, it's these boys always just outside the top 6. I mean, Everton have actually lost a fair number of their squad players. None of their real starting 11 players except for Idris Gana Gueye, who's gone to PSG. And I think that is going to be a loss for them, but they've kept Andre Gomes. They've brought in Fabian Delph, who actually could be quite a little handy, tidy little player for them, especially since losing Idris Gana Gueye. So, again, I think Everton are a club that are basically getting the best, or almost about as best out of the players as what they have. They're not really still good enough to try to challenge the top 6, in my opinion. That's why I do think there is that divide between the top 6 and the top 10 and the rest of the teams that I've got left in there. So, Everton, I reckon, best of the rest when it comes to the top 4 this season. Even though I did say just before that Wolves are a better side, I feel like Everton will, though, finish in 7th. In 6th position is Chelsea. We all know the story. Chelsea, of course, hit with that transfer ban, so they couldn't exactly splash the cash in the way I'm wishing, or I'm sure they were wishing they could. And Frank Lampard brought in a very interesting time. I felt like it was very, very quick, the appointment of Frank Lampard, and it could end up being a good thing for him, pretty much getting this one season where he gets a free pass. Doesn't matter how shit, except with the exception of if they get relegated or really end up low down the table. Frank Lampard basically gets a free pass this season. He gets to mould the team to his liking, and in season 2, there are no excuses. He has to deliver at that point. But that's what I think this is. It's pretty much a season of letting Frank Lampard get his team together, and I don't think they'll do much. I think they'll still qualify for Europe, though, so top 6, even with the players that they have now, not being able to bring new players in, still a top 6 side, still a class team, Chelsea, and I will say that they will finish in 6th. I know that Eden Hazard is a pretty significant loss, but I still think that they should be able to manage somewhat. It won't be a complete capitulation of a season, I don't think so. In 5th place is going to be Arsenal. Arsenal in 5th position, and that front 3 looks absolutely deadly, with the addition of Nicolas Pepe now going on that right wing position and Lacazette Aubameyang striker left wing. Oh my God. That is going to be such a scary front 3 for so many teams to deal with. And of course, Newcastle played them fucking week 1. My concerns with Arsenal, though, are is that front 3 going to get the service that it requires from their midfield? And I'm also pretty heavily concerned about their defensive line as well. The fact their club captain, centre-back, 32-year-old centre-back, Koscielny doesn't even want to bloody be at the club. Will he even play? Socrates is okay. Mustafi has become a bit of a liability for a club, or for a team like Arsenal. And yeah, on top of just my concerns with their defensive line, you've also got to think about their midfield. Ozil, probably their best midfielder, only picking up 2 assists in the Premier League last season. Xhaka, still there around, of course. Don't know how much you'll get from him. You've got Lucas Torreira, that defensive mid. But obviously, they've lost Ramsey as well. Danny Ceballos coming in. We'll see how he goes. I think, to be fair, how Arsenal go actually could come down quite a fair bit to how good Danny Ceballos is for them. But very interesting season coming up for Arsenal. I am going to put them in 5th. Just inside the top 4 in 4th position, Manchester United. Now, this season was poised as the big rebuild. We're getting rid of all the dead wood. We're bringing all the great players in that Manchester United apparently deserve or that should be playing for Manchester United. And it hasn't really turned out that way. I mean, the defense most certainly needed some fixing, and they have done that. It's ridiculous how much money they've spent on Aaron Wan-Bissaka and Harry Maguire. There is no way that those two players combined are worth £130 million. It is absolutely nuts that. They paid the English tax, of course, being an English club, buying an English player. You're always going to pay so much more. But regardless, they got the job done. They spent the money that they needed to, a fucking crazy amount of it, but they have got two very, very good defenders, Aaron Wan-Bissaka, Harry Maguire. They are definitely going to improve that back line. And I think people are forgetting, like, Manchester United aren't a complete and total basket case. You all know that, right? Manchester United, at, I think, the halfway point of the season, were playing arguably the best football that had been shown that season. That's a pretty big call, I know, when you've got Man City and Liverpool in the same league, but Manchester United were playing some fucking brilliant games of football when Ole Gunnar Solskjaer first really took over. I think a lot of people's opinions on United has been skewed a bit by their very lackluster and very, very poor finish to the end of the previous season, but I feel like it won't just be a complete capitulation. I don't think Ole Gunnar Solskjaer has lost the dressing room already and he won't get them playing that same way. I believe Manchester United have the ability to finish in the top four this season, and I think they will get Champions League by finishing in 4th place. In 3rd place, we have given it to Tottenham. Of course, last season's Champions League runner-ups, and I don't know if they've really done enough to show me that they are suddenly going to become a contender when Man City and Liverpool are still going at it in the Premier League, and they haven't really invested a crazy amount either. I know that they brought in Ndombele, but and by the way, Ndombele, Sissoko really guarding that back line and basically getting the ball up forward. Eriksen there. Oh boy, that's a bloody decent midfield that Tottenham have got now. A very nice little attack as well. Harry Kane, Heung-min Son and co. Decent defense. Goalkeeper Hugo Lloris. It's a good side. It's a team that very well could win the Premier League, but just not in this current era. Not right now. Not with Liverpool the way that they are, and no fucking way with Man City the way they are. In 2nd position, the runners-up, the same runners-up from last season, it's Liverpool. Yes, last season's runners-up are going to go back-to-back runner-ups once again in the Premier League. I say they're going to finish 2nd once again. They've had quite an inactive transfer window. Haven't really brought anyone in, haven't lost anyone of any sort of significance, and I do not think that they will top last season. There is not a chance that they go on and get, 97 points that they finished on? They will not get 97 points or even close to it. I'm pretty confident Liverpool won't even crack the 90 mark, which really, in this current era of the Premier League, you need to do that as a minimum to take down Manchester City. I don't think Liverpool are exactly going to drop off. That's not what I'm saying. I'm not saying they're going to get worse or anything, but I don't think they'll be able to close down and chase Manchester City in the same way. Man City could, by their standards, have a bad season, and Liverpool a pretty decent season, maybe sort of somewhat kind of follow what they did in the season prior, and I would still say Man City would win. I think they are the only ones that really you can say, if you had to put your house on it, who would win the Premier League? It's got to go to the boys in blue. The boys in sky blue anyway. And on top of my Premier League predictions, it is going to be back-to-back Manchester City. I'm telling you, man, they are just too good. They really are. With Pep Guardiola at the helm, with the amount of money that has been injected into that squad, they got 100 points 2 seasons ago. They got 98 points, if it isn't 98, 97, whatever, points last season. They could have a bad season, like I said before, and still get high 80s, maybe even bloody mid 80s, and even that is probably still enough to win the Premier League, I would say. Last season, I was genuinely tossing up between Liverpool and Man City. I think this season, you've got to say Man City are probably the somewhat stronger favourites compared to Liverpool and how they were at the beginning of last season. I think now it's just Man City are probably still, for me, the outright favourites, honestly. I feel like every single time I do a Premier League prediction, I go with Man City. Yeah, sure, maybe that's playing it safe, but I just don't believe Liverpool are going to be able to chase Man City in the same way. I think some concerns for Man City are they have some aging stars like David Silva, like Fernandinho, and even Aguero is now hitting his 30s, so there's some concern there, but they still have a very young core of great players. Like, just for example, you've got Raheem Sterling, they've got Zinchenko, Leroy Sané, if he does stick around, Bernardo Silva, tons of players, man. They've got so many great young players to rely on that are part of that starting 11, part of that core. that you just wonder they'll probably be like this for a little while longer. They've brought in Rodri, who I kind of maybe think of as potentially when David Silva moves on, that sort of the role he'll try to move into, just that other centre midfielder. And then they've got Angelino in as well. I was at the Premier League Asia Trophy. He was bad. He was not that good. In the Wolves game, he wasn't exactly on it. I'm not saying he's going to be a flop or anything, but Pep gave him a chance. Maybe he'll give him a chance in the Premier League as well. But gosh, I reckon Mendy doesn't have anything to worry about, or Zinchenko doesn't have anything to worry about. But there you go, lads. The prediction god has spoken, and that was my Premier League table for the 2019-2020 season. Let me know in the comments down below what changes you would make to my predictions, and hell, even if you're up for it, go ahead and put your whole Premier League table predictions in the comments as well. I'd be interested to see what you guys think. Thank you all so much for watching again, guys. Don't forget to like and, of course, subscribe if you are new. And until the next one, have a good one. Bye-bye.